People of the internet, welcome back to another video. It is I, Don Thomas, back in here with another one. As always, folks, the likes, the comments, and subscribes are all greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for the support on this channel. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic, folks. I got a video pulled up here. It comes from CNBC News, in which they entitled the video, "Why More Americans Are Being Pushed into Poverty." Of course, folks, I like to talk about things that maybe some of us can all relate to. I think I've been speaking about as of late how there's been more and more financial tension within our grocery stores, within the workplace, this, that, and the other. So I thought this video can maybe resonate with a lot of us average folks. Of course, we've been hearing about a rise in layoffs, a rise in, people struggling to find work and things of that nature. So with this title, of course, coming from CNBC, I hope they would be able to offer us a little bit more insight as to what's happening within our world, or just in our economy in general. I'll share my thoughts. Of course, I encourage you guys to share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let's get into it.
63% of workers say they wouldn't be able to cover a $500 emergency expense.
Most people don't have $1,000 in the bank. Most people cannot handle a tire blowout, or they're going to put it on credit.
Americans now carry more than $1 trillion in credit card debt.
The official poverty measure in the U.S. today is based on calculations from the mid-1960s.
It's also a system that is pervasive in actually creating poverty situations.
Poverty leads to more anxiety, it leads to more stress, it leads to more health problems.
37.9 million. That's the number of Americans currently living in poverty, accounting for 11.6% of the total population. That's despite the fact that America ranks first as the richest nation in the world in terms of GDP.
The United States is known for having this great abundance, and at the same time, alongside that abundance, there is widespread poverty and economic insecurity.
Sometimes you question, we're in the United States of America. How can the citizens be going through such a issue? We always boast that we're a superpower, that we are the richest in the world, and things just don't make sense.
Poverty in the U.S. had been steadily improving over the past decade, from a height of 48.8 million people living in poverty in 2013 to 34 million in 2019. That was until the pandemic changed its course.
COVID absolutely had a very deep impact on the access to employment and long-term employment for a number of families that were already vulnerable for various reasons.
Prior, it was myself and my two older brothers, along with my stepdad, that constantly worked to provide for everyone in the house. But after COVID-19 and the whole lockdown, we were laid off. And ever since then, we have had issues finding a job.
Poverty is expensive. About 11% of the federal budget, or $665 billion, goes to economic security programs. Child poverty alone is estimated to cost the U.S. over $1 trillion, based on the latest research from 2018.
There are also really high costs on an individual level. Poverty leads to more anxiety, it leads to more stress, it leads to more health problems, all kinds of things that amplify the effect of poverty.
The feelings that you would usually encounter when you're in this position is mostly depression. Why can't I find a job? Why are we in this situation? We're trying our best, and sometimes it's just falling back down on our face.
So how did poverty become such a big issue in the United States? And why is it so difficult to end it?
Pause it right there real quick. Very interesting so far, folks. Poverty here in the United States of America. Again, those numbers that they kind of went over, what was it, 39.7 million or whatever the case is of Americans identify as impoverished. Which is interesting. It's not startling, but it is startling, if that makes sense. Like, it's not startling in a sense of that seems to correlate with the news and just kind of like the way we've been kind of seeing the world been moving from, depending on what outlook you've been having on the world, depending on what sectors or tax brackets you lie in. But the narrative, of course, within at least mainstream media, we could all agree that most likely it seems as if that a lot of people are going through financial hardship. A lot of people are going through financial strain, right? Again, did a video not too long ago talk about the increase in, raising prices in groceries and things of that nature. And, we've been hearing about like tariffs and this, that, and the stock market going up and down and fluctuating and inflation and things of that nature. So I'm not necessarily startled at the fact that people are in poverty. I just didn't know it was that many people, right? And I've been saying this for some time, as a matter of fact, man. Like, I've been saying it, and I think I even called it. I might have tweeted this some time ago as well, too. I do think if we continue at the rate where the wealth gap is just continue to, rise Whereas, the people, the haves and the have-nots continue to grow. I think there's the people that do have it and people that don't. If that gap continues to widen at the rate at which I think it's widening, if I can say that word, I do think that there will be a full-out war between the rich and the poor. I think that's what's inevitably going to happen. And I turn to the situation that happened with the California fires, where there was a sector of the internet or people that were rejoicing that the rich and the wealthy were losing their homes, their goods, their possessions, this, that, and the other. There were some people that didn't feel any type of empathy for those people in that situation. I'm not necessarily saying that's right, but I'm seeing a sense of people being down so bad, I guess you could say financially, whereas they're no longer, looking to empathize with the people who, I guess, got it in that regard. When they hear that they're in a situation where they lost their possessions or their homes or whatever the case is. So it's very interesting, man. But again, the video is entitled "Why Americans Are Being Pushed into Poverty," and that was actually one of the thoughts that I had as well too. As I was watching this video, of course, we'll continue on a little bit more as well too. It seems as if they're being pushed into poverty. Of course, we were even talking about how there's maybe no longer a middle class. I think I even did a video on that not too long ago as well too, in terms of just saying that we were questioning if there was even a middle class. I think there was just the rich and the poor. I think the middle class is now the lower class. It's either you have it or you don't. Now, of course, that's going to be based upon different factors, salary, this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. But it does seem like the world, the constraints are being a little bit more, I guess you could say, more difficult to maneuver. And I feel like people are being pushed, almost forced, right? When people are not getting callbacks on jobs, when people are getting laid off left and right, when, all these stipulations of, return to office and things like that, it feels like, society is leaving people with no choice but to be in financial hardship. But of course, people can always make better decisions, this, that, and the other. I hear all of that. Of course, there is a level of accountability that we all must, be held accountable to. But it seems like, as I've been saying for some time, just like the Hunger Games, the arena itself is getting harder and harder to maneuver. The arena, of course, I just mean our world, our society, the infrastructure, the workforce, things of that nature. It just seems harder and harder to maneuver through, which is why I feel like the world, or America in general, is pushing people into poverty. So watch a little bit more. Again, this video comes from CNBC. Let's watch a little bit more, see if we could get a little bit more insight as to why more Americans are being pushed into poverty.
Inequality is one of the big reasons why the U.S. suffers from such high rates of poverty. The income for the top 10% was more than 13 times higher than income at the bottom 10%, according to the U.S. Census.
We, unfortunately, in the United States are at the very high end in terms of income inequality. And so what happens is, when the distance gets further and further away, the rungs on the ladder get further away, and it's harder for people to climb those rungs out of poverty into the middle and to the upper class.
The pandemic has made inequality worse. The Gini Index, which measures the nation's income inequality, rose for the first time in a decade by 1.2% in 2021.
The reason the pandemic has made that worse is because when you talk to large organizations, corporations, what they saw was that staff was leaving, but they had a response to that, right? Their response was, let's give bonuses, let's give raises. Many organizations, many small businesses, government, they don't have that luxury. So inflation has kept up with the money that most people in the 1% have made, but it has deepened and widened the gap between those that have money and those that do not.
Research by MIT estimates that the living wage in the United States is $24.16 per hour for a family of 4. But the federal minimum wage is set at $7.25 per hour. This means that a typical family of 4 needs to work more than 2 full-time minimum wage jobs to earn a living wage. And single-parent families need to work significantly harder.
We worked at a banquet hall. Any sort of party, we would set it up, come early, set the tables, dishes, plates, silverware, everything, you name it. We worked for $15 an hour. It was really bad. I would say we were really overworked, 13-hour shifts sometimes. We were really frustrated with where we were, but at the same time, it was like, what do we do if we leave? We were at that stage of like, yeah, we hate this job, but we have to keep it to continue going.
If we're looking at the broader population of people who are poor or low income, meaning one emergency away from being poor, we're talking about approximately 140 million people. Out of the 140 million, well over 70 million people, well over half of that population are people of color.
The U.S. also suffers from a lack of social safety nets that protect Americans from poverty.
If you look at, for example, the amount of cash that people might get if they're low income, it's very, very minimal.
Right now, we receive welfare, and it's roughly around $250 for my household is 7. And it actually has helped us a lot. Sometimes the numbers really don't make sense because how can a large family just live off a couple $100s, especially now in this day and age where you go to the grocery store, you spend in a few items $100.
Income inequality was listed as one of the number one reason, or just one of the reasons as to why people are being pushed into poverty. And it just makes complete sense. I literally just said that. They started off the point, that segment started off by saying this gap continues to widen, that more and more people are just going to be pushed into one emergency away from poverty, or whatever the case is. People don't have savings funds, this and the other, as the video previously mentioned as well too. Income inequality, I think, is something that kind of frustrates me the most because it just doesn't make any sense, like, to me. And again, I didn't, economics class and this, that, and the other. I pay attention here and there. So, of course, if you're an economist, you could, checks and balances and all the things that you can maybe rebuttal with. But minimum wage being $7.25, an hour of your life just worth $7.25. Now, of course, people will say, oh, depending on the sector, if it's a restaurant, fast food. And in my honest to God opinion, to this day, I don't understand how people who, I would consider essential workers, because remember back in the, 2020, that situation that took place, there was a lot of situations where people were considered essential workers and they could still work or were needed to work, whatever the case is. But those are the people that arguably paid still the least. Anybody that handles your food, your protection, your safety. So again, your teachers, your doctors, your police officers, your school bus drivers, anything in customer service, I think should be well compensated for. And it's not in this country. I've been saying that for the longest time. Like, salaries for certain jobs in certain fields don't make sense in comparison to other salaries in other fields, right? So again, like, man, you got people who, again, I'm familiar with the tech space. I used to work in tech, whatever the case is. And the salaries that you would see in there for people to be doing, some would argue, the bare minimum versus somebody who's actually rigorously working, whether that be a firefighter, a teacher who's working, 40, 50 hours a week teaching your children, and some people have bad children, right? Or your doctors or the people that handle your food, fast food workers. Those are the people that get paid next to nothing. And it's so backwards to me. Like, wait, what? Shouldn't we see to it that the people that are taking care of our kids Monday through Friday, multiple hours out the week, should be properly compensated for it? Should these police officers and, firefighters and this, that, it's just like the salaries are not livable. I just don't think, some could argue, hey, man, if we pay more people at our fast food dollars, then, our cheeseburgers will start costing $25, our meals, whatever the case is. And I feel like it's slowly but surely already becoming that. But it's just like, I would want to be rest assured that the man behind the counter that's dealing with my food is happy to be there. I don't want him disgruntled when taking my order. You see what I'm saying? Because disgruntled people do lackluster work, I would argue. You see what I'm saying? So it's just like, if people were properly compensated, we wouldn't be seeing, stories of burnout and people wanting to quit and people wanting to, if we just compensate people properly. Do whatever needs to be done to see to it that people can at least survive off of one job. You heard the numbers there, of course, as well, too, depending on the size of your family. Single family household, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, whatever the case is. One job is not going to cut it. It's just like you need multiple streams of income to survive in a situation. Whereas if we just see to it that the people that are working, any job, we're just being properly compensated for the hours that they're putting in for that establishment. It just doesn't make any sense to me, man. Wealth inequality, man, just wages in this country just doesn't make sense to me. And then you got, streamers and all these other people that are making millions of dollars, TikTokers that are dancing. I've spoken on that before as well, too. The TikTokers that are dancing and playing, those are the dudes that are making good bread. What I got to do? Come up with a dance? Tell a joke? What do I have to do? I want in. Let me know. And then you got teachers that are struggling to make ends meet. It just doesn't make any sense, man. Of course, this video is fairly long. Of course, I never necessarily watched the full thing in its entirety. It's a full video. It's 30 minutes long. But of course, I like watching, a good amount of the video, at least so I can get some context as to, what's being discussed. Of course, and I can share my thoughts from, the portion that I saw. Of course, I always encourage you guys to share your thoughts down as well, too. I'll definitely be sure to share the link down to this full video as well, too. Again, this video is from CNBC, and they entitled it, Why More Americans Are Being Pushed into Poverty. So, of course, folks, I do know, as I've mentioned, Financial strain and financial hardship, depending on where you're at in America right now, has been the name of the game for a lot of different people. Some people have it, some people don't. And it just seems like, as we saw in this video, there's a growing number of more and more people that don't have it. So what's the solution, folks? Of course, that's what I also like to do on this channel as well, too. We discuss the problems, but I also want to hear the solutions as well, too. How do we combat this financial strain that's happening in American households? What needs to be done? Some of you will say, oh, well, Trump's in office now, so we should be good to go. If you believe that. Some people will say, oh, man, they, learn a new skill and this, that, and the other. Sometimes I think we come up with solutions that sound easier said than done. But when your back is against the wall and you have a family of whatever the case is, what are you supposed to do? Just like the gentleman in this video as well, too. 7 members in his household, whatever the case is. What are you supposed to do? $15 an hour, $16 an hour, it's not going to cut it. One should be pretty confident that one job should be good enough to be able to compensate them properly, to be able to take care of at least the bare minimum of their financial responsibilities. But that doesn't seem to be the case in this country. Anyway, of course, those are my thoughts. Of course, I encourage you guys to share yours down in the comment section below. As always, the likes, the comments, and subscribes are all greatly appreciated. I will catch you guys on the next one.